Good morning, Patriots.
Good morning.
Welcome to the 375th consecutive Friday meeting of the East Valley Red Friday Patriots. Thank you for joining us this morning in support of America's deployed warfighters. I don't know if any of you might be familiar with the name Coffee Anderson, but Coffee Anderson is a singer, musician, songwriter. He's put out some absolutely fantastic patriotic songs. I happened to run across this just briefly a few days ago, and it happens to be a song that he's kind of putting a feeler out for right now prior to his actually recording this. So I would like for you to take a moment and listen to Coffee Anderson in his soon-to-be release, Since We Came Home. Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce some guests that we have that are here for the first time. Bill Cultus. Bill is back over here with Nancy. Bill, you are a Navy veteran, is that correct?
That is correct.
And you served what years?
69, 72.
So can you give me an idea about what your job was in the United States Navy?
I was a boiler technician.
Boiler technician. Hey, Bill, does that kind of give you an idea? You got some friends out here that did the same thing?
Yep.
We're certainly glad to have you join us today. Thank you for your service, and we're looking forward to your return. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you much.
Also, we have Margie Mareno. Margie is the spouse of our guest speaker today, Frank Mareno. We are certainly elated to have you here. I just want to know something. Did Frank drive on the way over here?
No.
Is he a backseat driver?
Yes.
I mean, he piloted helicopters for many years, so
That's
you
good. Yeah,
would
that's
think
good.
it'd be pretty particular about somebody at the control.
Yeah.
We're glad to have you here. Thank you for
Thank you
joining
so
us.
much. Thank you.
Well, Frank brought his whole family out because his daughter Renee is also here this morning. Renee, are you local here in the area as well?
Yes, sir.
Superb.
In
What
Mesa.
part of in Tempe?
Mesa.
And I'm sorry,
Mesa.
in Mesa. You're nearby.
Yes, sir. Right
So
down the street.
you have now an understanding that we meet every Friday and that you're more than welcome.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you coming out. Hope you'll return. And then we also have a friend of the family, and that is Michael Thompson. Michael, you're a United States Army veteran, and you were a helicopter crew chief. Is
Yes,
that
I
correct?
was. Yes.
How many other helicopter crew chiefs do we have out here? Raise your hand, please. So we've got a couple more out here, so you've got company. Which part of town do you live in, Gilbert?
Gilbert, yes, sir.
So how far of a drive was that over?
Not very far.
Does that mean that we might be able to see you again?
Yes, it does.
I certainly hope so. Thank you for joining us today. Appreciate you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for your service. May I have a hoo-ah for these first-time guests? Hoo-ah! Thank you. You know, this is the first Friday of the month, and as such, it gives us the opportunity to recognize birthday celebrants. So if you will celebrate a birthday during the month of August, please stand. May I have a hoo-ah for these birthday celebrants? Happy birthday, happy birthday. You know, our tradition here is to serve donuts on the first Friday in recognition of our birthday celebrants. So I want to take this opportunity to thank Dar and Dennis Miller and Richard Bartlow, who delivered the sweet treats today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We really do appreciate that. Hank, did you get mine to take home? Folks, today, August 7th, America pauses to observe National Purple Heart Day, which commemorates the creation of the oldest American military decoration created by General George Washington for military merit, dating back to the Revolutionary War. Following the Revolution, the decoration laid idle for virtually a century and a half, but it was through the efforts of General Douglas MacArthur that the U.S. War Department created the new Order of the Purple Heart. And today, the medal bears a bust of George Washington and his coat of arms. You know, the Purple Heart differs from most other decorations in that the individual is not recommended for the decoration. Rather, he or she is entitled to it upon meeting specific criteria for wounds received in combat. Furthermore, Purple Heart is a solemn distinction and means that a service member has greatly sacrificed themselves or paid the ultimate price while in the line of duty. The decoration's plain inscription for military merit barely expresses its significance. But that significance is memorialized at the National Purple Heart Hall of Honor located in New Windsor, New York. So let us pause to say thank you to all the brave men and women who have fought for our nation's freedom and bear the scars of war. Today, we have such veterans among us, veterans who have embraced and overcome the anguish and challenges of their wounds. We're honored and privileged to have them in our Red Friday community as they continue to demonstrate their support for our armed forces and our deployed warriors. It's our desire to honor these veterans of war and Purple Heart recipients with our group's sincere appreciation for their personal sacrifice and the assurance that when needed, this group will be there for them and their families. Allow me to share just a brief excerpt from a writing that I think pretty well sums up the importance of recognizing National Purple Heart Day each year on August 7. Honoring that sacrifice is not something we do once. It's something we continue to do because their sacrifice didn't happen once. They carry it for a lifetime. Respect that fades when it becomes inconvenient isn't respect. Respect that weakens because we've done it enough isn't respect. Respect that depends on novelty or repetition isn't respect. True respect lasts. True respect continues. True respect renews itself. And that is why we honor our Purple Heart brothers and sisters every year. Not because it's new or easy, but because their sacrifice didn't happen once. They carry it for a lifetime. And respect, real respect, is something we carry for a lifetime too. I would ask those of you who are the recipients of the Purple Heart decoration, please come forward and stand here in front of the podium. Gentlemen, having served as combat veterans of war, we wish to express our appreciation for your personal sacrifice and present you with a heartfelt memento of our appreciation. Ladies, if you will, I would like to ask that you pin these fine gentlemen.
There's two prongs. I think what I'll do, just put it on your pocket, that's okay. So we can, your collar is a little bit stiff and it makes it difficult. Yeah.
Got three more to go.
Sorry, no,
Brad's gonna be last.
no, we haven't.
Got two more.
We should have had a practice of this.
Gentlemen, what more can we say than thank you for your sacrifice? May I have a standing ovation for these folks? Thank you. Appreciate it, gentlemen. I have the distinct honor of introducing our guest speaker, Major Frank Mareno, United States Army, retired. Major Mareno is a U.S. Army Vietnam War veteran, best known for his service as a helicopter pilot with the 1st Cavalry Division, and particularly his heroic actions during the Battle of Drang Valley in November 1965. Frank Mareno enlisted in the United States Army, and prior to his service in Vietnam, underwent specialized training to qualify as a helicopter pilot on the UH-1 Huey helicopter, the primary utility aircraft used by the 1st Cav Division. His educational background served as a prerequisite for the rigorous aviation training program, which emphasized air mobility operations essential for the air mobile concept of the 1st Cav Division. Upon completion of pilot training, Frank Mareno progressed to pilot status and was assigned to aviation units in preparation for deployment to Vietnam. His battalion, part of the division's organic aviation assets, arrived in South Vietnam in September 1965, following the unit's activation earlier that year and its designation as the Army's 1st Air Mobile Division. This deployment positioned the 1st Cav Division as the initial large-scale air mobile force committed to the conflict, with over 400 aircraft facilitating rapid tactical movements across challenging terrain. As an aircraft commander, Mareno's role centered on air mobility operations for support of ground troops through essential aviation tasks. His general duties included troop transport, ferrying infantry battalions to operational areas, and conducting reconnaissance flights to scout enemy positions and terrain features. These missions exemplified the division's innovative use of helicopters for logistical resupply and rapid insertion, enabling forces to maneuver effectively in Vietnam's rugged landscape without reliance on roads or fixed-wing aircraft. By November 1965, Mareno had achieved the experience necessary to lead critical missions in combat and served as an aircraft commander with the 229th Aviation Battalion Assault Helicopters, 1st Cav Division, supporting combat operations in the Republic of Vietnam. On November 14, 1965, during the Battle of Drang Valley, despite landing zone X-ray being closed to helicopter traffic amid a fierce enemy assault, Frank Mareno volunteered to fly his unarmed Huey helicopter through intense enemy fire, including small arms and rocket-propelled grenades, to deliver essential ammunition, water, and medical supplies to surrounded American troops who numbered approximately 1,000 U.S. Cav troops facing 2,500 NVA soldiers. Facing uncertainty about whether friendly or enemy forces controlled the landing zone, he completed 14 perilous resupply and rescue missions, evacuated an estimated 33 wounded soldiers, and directly contributed to the survival and combat effectiveness of his battalion. While piloting his Huey helicopter during resupply and evacuation operations near landing zone X-ray, Mareno's aircraft came under heavy enemy ground fire from NVA troops positioned in the surrounding jungle and hills. The intense anti-aircraft fire, including small arms and machine guns, struck the helicopter multiple times, causing it to crash land in a clearing amid the ongoing battle. Despite the chaos and immediate threats from advancing NVA forces, Mareno and his crew took cover as they awaited rescue. His efforts in the resupply missions and survival of the crash highlighted the perilous nature of helicopter operations in the valley's rugged terrain. In the immediate aftermath, Mareno was evacuated via helicopter to a medical facility for treatment, allowing him to survive the incident and continue his service with the 1st Cav Division. This rescue underscored the high risk faced by aviation personnel and directly supported the unit's ability to maintain combat effectiveness despite the chaos of the engagement. Major Mareno will provide a more detailed account of that battle in his address this morning. Major Frank Mareno retired from the United States Army in 1980 after 24 years of distinguished service. He is the recipient of numerous awards and decorations, to include the Silver Star Medal for Valor, the Distinguished Flying Cross, and the Purple Heart for his actions during the first major battle in Vietnam at Drang. Immediately following his retirement from the armed forces in 1980, Mareno adjusted to civilian life by taking a position as a quality assurance representative with Mississippi Power and Light Company in November of 1980. Later, advancing to roles in quality assurance programs and administrative management within the energy sector. He eventually relocated to Glendale, Arizona, where he currently resides. Frank Mareno has engaged in various post-military activities that contributed to preserving the history of Vietnam War, especially the Vietnam War air operations, and supporting fellow veterans. His retirement enabled him to share his experience publicly, focusing on his role in the Battle of Drang Valley. Through such efforts, Major Frank Mareno has helped honor the sacrifices of his fellow servicemen and encouraged other veterans to share their stories for historical record. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Major Frank Mareno, U.S. Army, retired.
Good morning. I think I'll stand for a while here. I've been sitting so long now. How about that introduction? That was, I think it covered my entire lifetime right there. Such a thorough presentation. And I'd like to recognize Dick Sessions as my host and Nancy. I'm sorry, have trouble hearing me. Nancy Fassbender and Dick Sessions for their preparation and their invitation and handling all these things prior to my talk. And I'd like to recognize them. If you would, please, let's give them a hand. Dick, in his introduction, which was very thorough, has covered almost everything there was about the Battle of the Drang that I can add to. So what I'd like to do, my entire presentation is around the fact that I got to where I am now because of my participation in that battle. And over the years, people have come to find out that I was there, and they've approached me about it, and somehow it all built into a crescendo to where in 2002, I was selected to be nominated for the Medal of Honor. That honor came about, that nomination came about, and it got lost. It was submitted, but it was lost for 6 years. And nothing has happened since then. When they found it, when they found that it had been recovered by the IG, the board arbitrarily processed it and disapproved it and awarded me the Silver Star. So that's where we're at now. I have appealed that since, and even today, as we speak, there is a motion that's going before the Pentagon asking for this appeal to be overturned, and so we're waiting to see what happens with that. At any rate, let me tell you a little bit something about my early years. I was born here in Arizona, in Cochise County. You're familiar with the area down in Wilcox, Arizona, Tucson, that area, Benson. And I went to high school and graduated from Wilcox High School. That was in 1956. I joined the Army at that time. At 17, I entered the Army, enlisted unassigned, and joined the 101st Airborne Division as a paratrooper. And being young and energetic, I thought I could probably take on the world, and so I tried it there, and it didn't work out all that great. You know, after 3 years, I was still a private. I served 5 years as an enlisted man, and in 1964, I graduated from Warrant Officer Flight School as a Warrant Officer 1, and that's the rank at which I went to Vietnam with. I got out of the Army after 3 years, thinking that I could probably light up the world somewhere else, I guess. Whoa. And that's what my thinking was at that young age. And somehow working at quarries in Wilcox, Arizona in the summer was not the best kind of job that anybody would want. So after 90 days or so, I re-enlisted in the Army. And here again, I was seeking another. I had been in radio teletype and radio technology in my first tour. And so the second time I went in the Air Defense Artillery, thinking I could probably improve on my technical education. And I lived there. On my second tour, I lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for about a year and a half. It was too cold there. So the first opportunity I got, I found an assignment in Jacksonville, Florida. In '61, I moved down into Jacksonville, Florida, and while there, I spent a couple of years and found a girlfriend, got married, and then within a year or so, I was in Europe, Air Defense Artillery. About that time, the Vietnam War was warming up quickly, and when the helicopter school opportunity came up, I quickly joined. Let me back up because I want to structure this thing to show you what I did during my career that is of any importance. There are 3 iconic things that happened and that are historical in nature that were that are of note. And the first one is that when I was with the 101st Airborne Division as a young enlisted soldier, President Eisenhower federalized the troops in 1957. And I was with a unit that got federalized to be sent to Little Rock, Arkansas to integrate Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas. And that was my first experience. I never thought that it would be a historical event, but going back and doing research on the event itself, I was astounded to find out how many things really came out of Little Rock, because we've been living with this integration and segregation all those years. And you go back in 1953 is when 54, the Supreme Court ruled on Brown versus Education, the Board of Education, and they ordered the integration of the high schools in the South. And all those boards of education were making the effort, but they were very slow in doing. And when it came time in 1957, they were ordered to integrate Central High. The governor of Arkansas resisted, and that's when he declared he would block troops from enforcing it. And so President Eisenhower made the decision to send our unit down to Little Rock, and we did go down there, and we did push him past the door entering in there, and the Little Rock 9, as they say, were integrated into the school. Strangely enough, the governor found a way to shut the schools down for the next couple of years, and their turmoil was still going on. And even today, as we travel throughout the South, we can see that there are signs that there's still resistance. There's some, although we've made a lot of progress, it's just something that's hard to overcome. But it's a good country that we've got, and we're trying hard. And as you can see, as we know, those of us who served, no, we can get along with our fellow soldiers regardless of skin because, as we found out, in the foxhole, there is no skin color. And everybody bleeds red. So that's something that we learned quickly, and it's stayed with us since then. And that's part of our values today. The second iconic thing that happened to me was after I was still when I had graduated from flight school and was preparing to go to Vietnam with the 1st Cavalry Division. In 1965, the latter part of 1965, there was an insurrection in the Dominican Republic. And I don't know how many really know or care about the Dominican Republic, but it's a country that is to the south of Florida in the Atlantic Ocean, and about 1,030 miles or so south of Florida. And it's an island, a huge island that sits down there, mostly tourism now. But we went down there because the island had been in turmoil since 1800s, 1844 or so, when a dictator took charge of it. And that was, at that time, Haiti. It was the island of Haiti. And the Spaniards came in, Spain came in there and occupied it for a while. The dictator took over by the name of Balaguer. And Balaguer ruled with an iron fist for many, many years. And they were always a problem to the United States. And so in 1963, 64, they decided that we would go in there, and we did interfere with the government that was existing there, because there again, once the Spaniards left, they left a guy by the name of Trujillo, who was a very rough dictator as well. And he got deposed, and then they had elections, and the elections were overthrown, and then, of course, we had to interfere, or we did interfere, shall I say. And we went down there my unit went down for about 3 months. We were there. And the only reason I came back was because my unit was about to ship out to Vietnam. So I was in Dominican Republic and came straight back, was spent about a week at home, and shipped over with the 1st Cavalry Division out of Mobile, Alabama. Spent a month on a ship going to Vietnam, and arrived in the latter part of October, just before the Battle of the Drang. So that's the progression on that. And the third iconic thing that happened, of course, was the Battle of the Drang. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that Battle of the Drang, because I think it's been pretty well covered. If you have any questions, I'll be more than glad to discuss these with you. Yes, it was a fierce battle. It was very intense, and we did cover at least 14 missions into the landing zone. Excuse me a minute, my watch is telling me something. I think tell it to leave me alone. And so, like I said, there's so much that can be said about that. The destruction of the watching. We pulled troops out and that were in battle as they collected in the collection point in the landing zone. Hal Moore was the unit commander, a very staunch and straightforward commander, and he loved his troops. But he was taking a beating, and all we could do is there were no troops they cut the reinforcements off. He had something like 200 of his 400 men in battle. We evacuated 33 in my ship and 39 in another, and those 14 missions that we brought in, we were not prepared to evacuate because our aircraft were not configured to carry wounded. So what was happening was that we would come in with a load of ammunition, a load of water or medical supplies. They would stack them in the door of the Huey so they could, when we landed, as we landed, they pushed them on out. Troops were there to pick up the ammunition boxes or anything that we brought in. They carried it off, and then in return they brought in and threw the bodies of the wounded aboard. We had no one to care for them. All we could do was our crew chiefs were absolutely brilliant. Our gunners took care of these guys as they tried to make them as comfortable as they could. They had about a 13-minute flight as we took them out and dropped them off at the nearest hospital. And that was a very, very trying experience. It's something that stayed with me since then. So after the Battle of the Drang, now Elvis told me, make sure that I go into detail and say what I saw and what I did. Elvis, that's about as far as I'm going to go. I can tell you that, yes, there were bullets zipping around us. It's an interesting situation, and the question comes up, were you not scared? How did you feel? The only thing that I can tell you is that I think if you talk about fear in combat, you're dealing with adrenaline, and you are so busy tied up. We had practiced these things so many times already, landing, who was going to handle the controls, who was going to take direct what the crew chief and gunner were doing, and so it came automatically. You never had time to think about it. Our thoughts were after the 14 hours that we had kept flying, and because it was flying from there, after 2 hours needed refueling, you go hot refuel, get ready to go back again. If your aircraft got hit, my aircraft got hit, I take it back. They landed, I get a crew chief to examine it, inspect it to see where it got hit, because we could feel the bullets hitting at hard points throughout the aircraft. You never knew whether the aircraft would make it back or not. But we survived, and so I was thankful enough, and I didn't give it much thought until days after that we really had a chance to assess this thing. We figured, well, we've got another year to go, so we better get used to it. And that's essentially, we never got into any battle that was that intense. And so it's something we can look back on with a lot of pride. Another thing that happened after the battle, as I came back to the unit, came back, shall I say, to our home base. We licked our wounds and we replenished our aircraft and our equipment and got ready for other operations. And in 1966, I had been there. The battle was in November of 1965. I was given a battlefield commission to lieutenant instead of 1966. So I was now brown bar, as they say, lieutenant, and I had an opportunity to be leading aircraft flights myself at that time. And in 1966, January, 30 days after the Drang battle, I was Freeman and I flew made up the two aviators in the crew on my ship in the Drang Valley. Freeman and I were flying again in January together, and we landed to pick up soldiers that had been wounded. We were flying ash and trash that day. Ash and trash being that we're flying from one location that a unit in support of a unit, moving troops from that unit had to move from one location to another, or bringing them ammunition or bringing them food and that sort of thing. And so we weren't engaged in direct combat, but they asked us to come and pick up some troops, and we agreed to it. And it was supposed to be cold. Cold, they said, no enemy activity. We landed, and we came under fire completely. That's where I took my wound, where I was wounded. And nothing came out of that. Essentially, it's just we managed to sort of save 5 American soldiers at that time, and it was just something that's part of my record, and so it's something that we really did well. 30 days later, I was on an operation, and it's something that's memorialized in a book by oh gosh, the author escapes me. Anyway, Battles in the Monsoon is the name of it. And what happened there is that I got shot down in coming in and landing. I had 6 troops aboard. The ship ahead of me had dropped off 6. And my aircraft, of course, when it crashed in the landing zone, blocked off any other approach of anyone else coming in. And so I spent the night there, and the next day I didn't know anything about this, but Freeman is a story unto himself, because he was a soldier that, when I met him, he was a captain, but he had been in Korea. He had been a master sergeant in Korea after the Korean War. He stayed in the Army, got into flight operations, and was met up with Bruce Crandall. And he flew missions in Saudi Arabia and mapping the area in the Middle East and then South America. But he came to us, and Ed Freeman was on his way back from our tour. His tour was over, and Bruce Crandall was sending him back to early from our first tour within the first year. He flew from our home base at Anke, and he flew to Pleiku, which was where the Big Bird, as we said, the C-141s that would carry the troops between Vietnam and the States. And he was waiting for his plane to come in that night, found out that I had been shot down, and he went and turned his Class A uniform in, because he had prepared all his stuff to come back, and shipped it, but he had Class A uniform. He went and got borrowed fatigues to put on, to wear, went back to the unit, and there Bruce Crandall was still there, and Bruce asked him what he was doing back there. He says, what he told me, he says, Frank Mareno's been shot down, and I'm here to go pick him up. And so, and Bruce told him that you can't, you're not assigned to this unit anymore. He said, well, Bruce, you give me an airplane or I'll steal one. And that's the kind of guy he was. And so he did take the aircraft, and excuse me, Elvis asked me to bring the photo. There's a photo that appeared mysteriously from somewhere. I have no idea. But one day I saw Bruce Bruce used to be, of course, associated with the city of Mesa. And he called me one day, and he said, I saw your picture in Las Vegas. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, yeah. He says, you were there. I can see you can see your face on there, because you're facing the camera, and there's a helicopter in the background, and it's my helicopter, and it's the one that that Ed Freeman and I were flying when we came and picked you up. So what Ed Freeman went back and got Bruce to steal an aircraft, as they say, and they flew in and they came in and they did pick me up. We picked up the wounded that were in there with us, and picked me up, and my co-pilot, and crew chief for that matter. So that's essentially my story. I don't know how else I could cap it. Dick Sessions did so well on this presentation that it took a lot of my thunder, but it was all good stuff, so I can't argue at all. So I appreciate you listening to me. I'm open to questions,
I
and
have a
I'll be more than
question.
glad to spend whatever time you want.
Hi, I'm Nancy.
Hello,
You
Nancy.
brought something along, did you not, that you wanted to talk about? What, this thing here, the long,
My staff.
is that what you want to show?
Oh yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, could you?
Of course.
Sure.
What I got is, I'd like to show it off. I'm very proud of it. It's a gift from one of my daughters. And she found it in I guess, online somewhere. It's made of, it's a staff that's made out, carved and made out of Purple Heart wood, a Purple Heart tree, out of Brazil. And, you know, if you look at it close, you examine it, it looks like the actual flesh of the heart. I think that's where it's got its name. So, but it's got she carved my name on it, and part of my military history. So you're welcome to look at it. I just brought it along so you share it with you. Okay. Sure. Thank you.
Frank, I have a quick question for you. Over here.
I'm sorry.
What was the mission for the directing troops into Drang Valley?
If you know anything about Vietnam, or you can look on the map, there's North Vietnam had moved troops into a position where they thought they could cut Vietnam, the country of Vietnam, in half along the Highway 19 from Quy Nhon on the east coast, the city of Quy Nhon. Swedish city of Quy Nhon on Highway 19 all the way to Cambodia. And the Special Forces camp at Plei Me was just on the course of that road, that highway, And so the Special Forces camp was under siege by the North Vietnamese. And when we arrived there, they were the South Vietnamese tried to reinforce it. They were ambushed, and they called in a battalion of the 101st from our 1st Cavalry Division. And we went down there and broke the siege to the Plei Me Special Forces camp, and we caused the North Vietnamese to break off the contact, and they started moving from the Plei Me base to the Cambodian border. And it was that LZ X-ray that we thought, the Americans thought that they could cut off and decimate the enemy forces. And so they put the 1st to the 7th Cavalry at the base of a mountain, a big, massive outcrop of a mountain. And we landed at the base of the mountain where they had chosen LZ X-ray, dropped our troops off, and what we didn't know was that at the top of that mountain, on that massive outcrop, was they had 2 regiments of North Vietnamese, and these guys, all they had to do was just tumble off the mountain and down this like a big ridge, break in the ridge there, and they funneled right into LZ X-ray, and so it was easy for them to reinforce. But it was so opportune for us to bring in B-52s, and that's one of the first times that they've used B-52s to support American troops that close, because they were throwing bombs. They were talking about 500-pound bombs within 100 yards of our troops, just to break the back of the enemy. And we did. We caused them to break off contact and take whatever forces they had, and they moved back across the Cambodian border.
Your wife told you to drink some water.
I'm sorry.
Your wife told you to drink some water.
If the wife says I do it, I guess I better do it. Huh? Cheers.
Frank, when the Cav unit was first dispatched to the Drang Valley, they consisted of approximately 450 soldiers going up against 2,500 NVA soldiers.
Yes.
That group was later reinforced to bring our numbers up to roughly 1,000, still facing 2,500. Had, just out of curiosity, sufficient reconnaissance been made to determine the scope of the enemy that those soldiers were going up against?
No, a good question, because no, actually the Battle of the Drang was a good win for us in the way, and if you go by counting body count, that sort of thing, the damage we did to the enemy. However, when the 1st of the 7th Cavalry, that's one battalion that had been beaten up in the Drang, was being pulled out on the 17th of November, they brought in the 2nd of the 7th had been brought in by land. They had marched into LZ X-ray to take over the perimeter. They took over their positions, and then they decided to move them to a place called LZ Albany, but they were going to march overland to LZ Albany, which was probably, I say, a quarter of a mile away. And they marched out of LZ Albany, and it was totally a debacle because they did not put out their flank security. And that battalion got decimated. They lost 800 troops. It was totally rendered ineffective. Excuse me. Just a bad choice by the commander because he just marched in column and never put out any security to the side, and they were ambushed on both sides in from the jungle as the enemy recognized what they were doing. So it really cost us a lot. Not much is being said about LZ Albany, but you can Google the Battle at LZ Albany and it'll tell you. There's books been written about the thing by the infantry officers, the lieutenants that were there, and laying out how the thing came about.
What were the total losses of roughly 1,000 American troops in the Battle of Drang?
Oh dear. I'd say there's probably 142 lost, I think it was. 142 dead. We recovered most of the wounded. We were able to pull out most of the wounded. But we're only looking at troops, strength of 400 men.
Anybody have any other questions for Major Mareno?
For a better understanding of what Frank's saying, the Battle of X-Ray was only half of the Battle of the Drang Valley. The Battle of Albany was the second half that was not in the book, We Were Soldiers Once and Young, by General Moore and Joe Galloway. They wrote that book, and that was from the movie that they put out on it. That's only half of the battle. And when he said they were trying to put in 400 and something troops, so they only had about 350 men in, and there were about 2,000 Vietnamese, mainly NBA hardened troops coming off that mountain. And they got shot up so much on that 5th mission that they closed that LZ. They would not let any helicopters in. But shortly after that, Al Moore realized that battle was so intense, he was going to run out of ammunition and they were going to get overrun. So he called and asked for volunteers to bring helicopters in, and he asked for the dust-off. Dust-off came in, and they got shot up. Only one helicopter landed. They didn't pick anybody up because they got shot up too bad, and they refused to go back in. And Frank Mareno volunteered to go in with his pilot, which was Medal of Honor winner Ed Freeman, and then Bruce Crandall went in with Chris Myers, and then their crew chiefs and stuff. And they went in 14 times that day, and they'd been flying six in the morning, doing scouting and inserting troops, and they flew until about 10 o'clock at night. There were about 100 and something, less than 100 men killed, but about 100 and something wounded in X-ray. And then when the other troops, after the second day, they called in Broken Arrow. They're being overrun, and every plane in Vietnam responded, and they had airplanes stacked up to 10,000 feet circling in and bombing while Frank and those guys were bringing in ammunition, supplies, and water and taking out the wounded. And so they flew 14 missions into that closed LZ. They got shot up several times. Both helicopters got shot up, and they had to change helicopters several times. But then after the third day, the other troops marched in and then the troops did basically the NVA, because of the artillery and all the planes dropping all the bombs, and they actually put in B-52 bombs on top of that mountain. And so the troops, the NVA, retreated. They flew. Frank and the rest of his men came back and picked up all the men from Colonel Moore's troop and took them out. The other guys started marching out, and at night they were attacked by another huge group, and then that was basically they lost a lot of men. That was where they lost most of the men, and it was a horrible tobacco because it was very poorly. They should not have done that, but that's what happened. So
Thank you, Elvis. Appreciate it. Frank, I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to the Order of the R.E.D. and provide you with this certificate of appreciation, which states that we hereby extol and commend Major Frank Mareno, United States Army retired, for his distinguished military service, veteran support initiatives, and support of the East Valley Red Friday Patriots. Thank you, sir. Very good.
Thank you.
Additionally, I will set this over here and put this in an envelope for you. I would like to present you with this Red Friday lapel pin. You'll see quite a few of our folks out here that proudly display this. And we're hoping that as you make your rounds about, that you might be able to encourage some folks about participating in our R.E.D. program and giving them a little insight about what this program is about and its importance. So in other words, even though it will not be a compensated position, we would like for you to promote our Red Friday program.
Pat myself on the back. Come up here. Let you know.
Come right up here.
Let you know that a message that you can carry out to your youngsters, those in your family. I came from a very poor background in Dos Cabezas, Arizona, in the Chiricahua Mountains. And I think that my career exemplifies what can be done if the kid makes up his mind that that's what he's going to do. And I was very successful in my military career. I finished my university training at Embry-Riddle University and completed my degree there and went on to for a master's degree in Mississippi College. So it's just something that a child needs to make up their mind that they're going to do something with their lives. You can do it, and I think I'd like to let people know that that's the way I feel. But I was helped along, no question about it, but it can be done. So I'd encourage anybody, I'd talk to any group of children and tell them that they can do whatever they want to do if they have the desire to do it. Thank you.
I believe that Ken Stossel has an announcement he would like to make. And Nancy, I think you're going to go back there with Ken.
Anyways, my name is Ken Stossel. I'm the president of our Veterans Association at Dolce Vita. And we firmly support all of those veterans who have gone beyond not only their service, but then did the transition into serving the public in the community. With that said, I would like to make this presentation, and it reads, Rosemary Lloyd, U.S. Army veteran, for your dedicated support of the ALS and disabled military community, July of 26. These items right here, these items Rosemary has provided, and some of them found their way up to my daughter up in Washington State. She is a veteran who served in the Saudi Arabia. She worked, her job was OIC of a Patriot missile position. And unbeknownst to her at the time, she has contracted ALS. And I said, Elizabeth, how can that be true? How can that happen? You weren't in burn pits. You weren't in Kuwait where they had burning oil wells, etc. She said, Dad, the military has determined that people working in that part of the world are 2 to 3 times higher for debilitating things like ALS and neurological problems. So I'd like to give this Rosemary for doing such a wonderful job with the ALS community. One other thing before closing. I think overall the general public needs to understand what our veterans go through. And it sure ain't for the money, I'll tell you that.
Thank you, Ken. I mean, I want to thank you, Ken. It's a privilege to make my quilts and to give them away to a worthy cause. Thank you.
I don't know if you folks are aware, but Rosemary served in the 50s with the Women's Army Corps. She was a service member there for 3 years. And she has continued following her military service to be very, very active and involved in veteran initiatives. And we thank you, Rosemary. You are an absolute jewel. Thank you for your ongoing community service. Thank you. I do have a couple of three announcements. You've heard me every week talk about the Reach Across America Arizona Veterans Honor Tour online auction, which came to an end on July 31. However, there are a few items that remain that were not sold on that online auction. They are available for you to purchase. Additionally, if you elected not to participate in the auction, I encourage you to at least purchase a wreath or two for the Reach Across America program. Anyone wishing to review what remains from the online auction, please get with Nancy following this assembly, and she'll be able to show you what remains. If you still don't see something that you like, buy a couple of wreaths, which are going to be laid at a veteran's grave come this fall. Also want to remind you that the Patriots Ball is scheduled for October 17. Patrick McNeil, raise your hand over here. Patrick is available for anyone looking for more information or wanting to purchase tickets and make a payment for participation in that ball, I can assure you it is an absolutely fabulous event scheduled for October 17. It's an event that I encourage you to participate in. And we thank you for sponsorship of that ball. Just another reminder that we have scheduled guest speakers to join us in the coming weeks of August and September. So I encourage you to come out each Friday whenever possible to support these speakers. To our first-time guests, to Major Mareno, to Elvis, to your family, thank you for joining us today. We sincerely hope that you will return to share in our camaraderie and support of our mission. Please know that you will always be welcome at our Red Friday assemblies. And as a final reminder, let us not overlook the importance of this Red Friday mission to keep our deployed warfighters in our thoughts and prayers, and to continue to demonstrate our support for these fine men and women. And please keep in mind that it is patriotism that unites us. Enjoy your weekend.